June 6, 1944, in the rain-lashed bocage of Normandy. Dawn creeps in like a thief, a slow, slick intruder that smears the ancient hedgerows in strokes of grey and black. Mud churns beneath invisible tank treads, thick as spilled ink across weathered parchment, while the air clings heavy with diesel reek and the sharp, metallic sting of cordite from the night's dying roar. Somewhere along the narrow lanes, a lone Tiger tank prowls, its 88mm gun barrel thrusting forward like a monolithic shadow, hurling long, accusatory tendrils across the flooded fields. Inside that steel leviathan, the crew huddles in the faint green glow of their dials, whispers of prayers escaping chapped lips, desperate pleas against the phantoms of Allied paratroopers who plummeted from the storm-torn sky mere hours ago, their chutes unfurling like pale fungi in the gale. Cut to the ditch, where Sergeant Elias Kane presses himself into the earth, a 29-year-old farm boy from Iowa with mud-caked fatigues clinging like a second skin. His fingers, numb from the chill, curl around a strange tube of steel and wood. The M1 Bazooka, all of 12 pounds, slung across his chest like some plumber's forgotten pipe, loaded with a rocket that defies every law of war. It shouldn't work. Not against that. Not against the Tiger's frontal armor, a slab of Krupp steel 100mm thick, forged to laugh at shells that could crumple lesser machines. Rain patters on Kane's helmet like impatient fingers drumming a dirge, his breath fogging the air in ragged clouds as he wonders if this portable wonder, shipped over from some stateside tinkerer's fever dream, is salvation or just another cruel joke from the brass. The Tiger's searchlight suddenly flares, a harsh white stab that sweeps the field like a scythe, illuminating foxholes where the 101st Airborne licks its wounds from D-Day's savage dawn. Men flinch, shadows twisting into phantoms. A medic binds a gut-shot private's belly with trembling hands, the coppery reek of blood mingling with the wet wool of soaked wool blankets. This is the bocage's cruel theatre. Ancient earthen walls, overgrown with thorns and brambles, turning open fields into a claustrophobic maze where giants stumble blind. Without a way to kill those giants, the invasion hangs by a thread. Beaches choke with the dead. Landing craft wallow in surf turned red, and the dream of liberating Europe drowns in the tide. Kane's squad clusters in the muck, a ragtag knot of Iowa dirt farmers and Brooklyn wise guys, their faces gaunt masks under rivulets of rain. They murmur the specs like a litany, voices low against the wind's howl. 2.36-inch warhead, a shaped charged devil that promises to melt armor at 200 yards, turning solid steel to slag with a jet of plasma hotter than the sun's core. German High Command had scoffed at intercepted reports. Yankee fireworks, they'd called it, fit only for scaring pigeons. But here, hearts pound like war drums in the mud, curiosity sharpening to a blade's edge. The bocage favors the desperate. Those walls that blind the tigers also hide the hunters, turning behemoths into stumbling colossi, their wide tracks bogging in the quagmire, while a single man with a tube can strike from the shadows. The low growl of the Maybach engine vibrates through the ground now, a seismic rumble that sets teeth on edge. Whispers sharpen. Load it, Sarge. Kane shoulders the weapon, its cold steel warming in his grip like a reluctant ally. Defiant hope flickering amid the dread. The turret swivels, slow, inexorable, locking onto a phantom rustle in the thorns. He rises, rocket-armed, finger on the trigger. Doubt claws in that frozen instant. Will this pipe dream pierce the unbreakable, or invite only annihilation? Whoosh! The backblast scorches the air behind him, wilting grass to ash. The rocket streaks, a comet's tail of smoke, slamming home. Boom! Smoke blooms like a funeral pyre, earth shuddering as the warhead bites. Yet the Tiger lumbers on, unscathed. Its engine snarls defiance, treads chewing the ditch toward them. The squad scatters. Bullets whip the rain. Kane dives, heart slamming, the beast's shadow swallowing the dawn. One hit, no kill. The myth holds for now. But in the chaos, as shells rake the hedgerows and men scream into the void, a deeper riddle burns. What heresy had the Americans smuggled into this hell to make the impossible, inevitably, real? To answer that, we must trace the spark back across the Atlantic, to a reluctant father in the arsenal of democracy, whose sketches would birth a weapon that humbled gods. Dawn fractures the horizon over Detroit's Willow Run plant. Autumn 1942, a mechanical heartbeat thrumming through the vast hangar where assembly lines snake like iron veins, pumping out B-24 bombers under floodlights that cast long flickering shadows across riveted wings. Oily rags drape over tool benches, their petroleum tangs sharp as regret, while welding torches spit arcs of blue fire, painting the air in fleeting shades of gold and obsidian. In the corner, amid the din, Dr. Edward Uhl hunches over a drafting table strewn with crumpled beer cans and yellowed blueprints, his bespectacled eyes burning with a Quaker's quiet fire as his ink-stained fingers trace the graceful curve of a steel tube. The embryonic form of the bazooka, salvaged from a discarded super prototype, sparked by a Hollywood prop gun that had caught General Leslie Groves' eye in a morale reel flickering on a makeshift screen. The distant wail of air raid sirens drills through the smog, a phantom echo of Europe's blaze, urging hands to move faster against the rationed hours. That heresy smuggled into Normandy's mud, the tube that scorched Sergeant Kane's ditch but left the tiger unscathed, traces its lineage here, to this forge of American defiance, where the stakes pulse like the plant's generators. Hitler's panzers carve through Russia and Africa unchecked, beaches from Dieppe to Tobruk, littered with the husks of outgunned allies, demanding a weapon light enough for a paratroopers pack, yet fierce enough to crack the Reich's armored spine. Uhl, a 38-year-old engineer from Pennsylvania's rolling hills, knows the weight of it all. His calloused palms, roughened by late nights and moral wrestlings, sketch not just metal but redemption. A shoulder-fired rocket to arm the everyman against the machine age's tyrants. The rising hum of ingenuity builds in those sketches. Uhl's team, a cadre of slide rule wizards and grease monkey machinists, pores over captured intel from a downed Luftwaffe courier, sketches of the German Panzerfaust, that crude hollow charge lance, and fuses it with Yankee verve. A 60mm rocket motor takes shape, its solid fuel grain screaming for a full 10 seconds in flight, propelled by a warhead whose copper liner promises to collapse inward upon impact, birthing a pencil-thin jet of plasma at 20,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the forge of stars. Admiration swells for these unsung alchemists, their long nights unraveling the poetry of physics. How a shaped charge defies brute force, slipping through armor's weave like a needle through silk, melting the impenetrable from within. But shadows haunt Uhl, the ethical thorns of a pacifist's soul twisted into war's service, each line drawn a concession to the night he vows to end. Enter Major Henry Hap Halliburton, the chain-smoking Texan test pilot whose drawl cuts the tension like a Bowie knife, his Stetson tilted against the hangar drafts as he shoulders the prototype for its first live fire. Out in the Nevada desert, under a merciless sun that bakes the sand to glass, the crisis ignites. Load, aim, trigger squeezes, whoosh, backblast erupts, flames licking Hap's boots like the devil's own tongue, singeing leather and flesh in a roar that shreds eardrums and scatters techs like leaves. The rocket veers wild, crosswinds twisting its tail into a drunken spiral, slamming harmlessly into a dune that fountains sand skyward. Hap dives, rolls, coughs acrid smoke. The tube glows cherry red in his hands, a near-fatal tantrum that nearly buries the project in red tape and recriminations. From that scorch mark rises resolve, tweaks to the fins for stability, a venturi shroud to tame the blast, turning falter into ferocity. 3 seconds to launch, eternity to wait. Stalin's desperate cables from the Kremlin, post-Kursk's Tiger rampage, where 1,500 Soviet tanks fed the pyres, plead for this very equalizer, weaving the macro thread of alliance's fray. Without it, the Eastern Front buckles, D-Day becomes a suicide wave. Yet in the micro-quiet, Uhl pens a letter home by lamplight, ink blurring with unshed regret. This tool will end the night, Margaret, but at what dawn's cost? Rivet guns hammer fate into steel now, slow and deliberate, birthing the first production run, 5,000 units by spring, crated in olive-drab anonymity for the Atlantic crossing. Uhl stands at the loading dock as trucks rumble away, exhaust veiling his face in diesel ghosts, the weight of unleashing etched deep in the lines around his eyes. Triumph teeters, a fragile perch, as early whispers filter back from Sicily's sun-baked slopes. Shipments fizzle against Panthers, crews dubbing it a glorified dud, rockets glancing off like rain on slate, Could this backyard contraption, born of desperation and doubt, truly humble the tiger's roar? Or was it destined to rust forgotten in Normandy's relentless downpour? To grasp the tiger's terror, the iron colossus that mocked such toys, we must cross back to the Reich's foundries, where engineers forged a myth of invincibility that would soon face its reckoning. Mist coils like spectral chains around the slag heaps of Kassel, Germany, October 1941. Factory whistles slicing the fog with shrill, accusatory shrieks that rally the dawn shift to their stations, where welders' torches etch luminous wounds into the flanks of hulking shadows rising from the assembly bays. The air assaults the senses, acrid plumes of weld smoke clawing at watering eyes, the guttural thunder of Maybach HL230 engines belching plumes of sapphire exhaust that hang low and choking, while workers' gaunt faces, hollowed by ersatz bread and endless shifts, gleam under the glare of arc lamps, propaganda banners fluttering overhead with bold strokes proclaiming unbesiegbar, invincible. In this cradle of conquest, the tiger eye takes its first shuddering breath. An 88mm KWK-36 cannon, longer than a conscript's outstretched arms, yawning from a sloped turret like a predator's insatiable maw, its interleaved road wheels gnashing gravel, with the casual disdain of ancient deities trampling mortal. Realms, that reckoning Uhl, unleashed from Willow Run, the backyard tube teetering, on despair in Sicily's dust, found its perfect foil here, in the Reich's fevered heart, where the stakes forged in desperation demanded a counterstroke. Dunkirk's humiliation still stung, with Soviet T-34s slinking across the steppe like ghosts in sloped armor, mocking the panzers that once thundered unopposed. Hitler, in a midnight tirade from the wolf's lair, decreed a colossus to eclipse them all, birthing the tiger under Ferdinand Porsche's obsessive blueprints. A 56-ton behemoth of interlocking plates, each rivet a testament to Teutonic precision, costing 700,000 Reichsmarks, and crewed by men who would become legends or ghosts. The ascent of engineering's tragic pinnacle unfolds in those foundries, sloped glacis angled at 30 degrees to glance away 75mm shells like pebbles skipped across a frozen pond. The interleaved suspension devouring rough terrain with a symphony of clanking torsion bars, each wheel a cog in a machine that could traverse 37 miles per hour on roads but craved 500 litres of fuel for every cautious league, all builds in the workers' hushed reverence, their sweat-slicked hands guiding the beast's assembly, but hubris creeps in like rust. Oberst Hans von Luck, the battle-hardened veteran of France and Africa, circles the prototype with a diary clutched in gloved fingers, his entries later read in a timbre laced with fading wonder. These monsters elevate us all to demigods, their shadows swallowing fear. 1,347 would roll from these bays, each a rolling fortress that pulverized British Matildas at Dieppe into crumpled wrecks, their crews evaporating in flashes of orange fury. Test day dawns merciless. Load the breach, rammers slam home. The 88 roars, muzzle flash blooming like a false sunrise, recoil shuddering the earth as a distant target buckles, steel folding like wet parchment under the high explosive hammer. Shell casings eject, smoking, crews cheer, fists pounding hatches, guns blazing, but chains of steel drag them down. The beast's thirst strands it in mud, its 19-foot width snaring bridges like a noose, turning mobility into Achilles' heel. By 1943, Tigers tally 1,800 Allied kills from Tunisia to Kursk, a ledger of dominance that echoes across fronts. Yet each victory drains the fatherland's veins. Fuel convoys harried by Spitfires, factories bombed to rubble. Von Luck mounts up for the first patrols, his columns snaking east, the commander's cupola framing a world bent to iron will. Normandy beckons now, the bocage's verdant snare, where U-boat shadows deliver these titans to blunt the coming storm. Von Luck's panzers churning French soil under ersatz coffee toasts to eternity. Laughter swells as Abwehr dispatches whisper of Yankee contrivances, a shoulder-fired imp that spits dragon's breath. Portable baubles against this. The ranks ripple with scorn, mugs clinking in the mess tent's haze. Yet a chill gust snakes through the convoy, carrying doubt's faint murmur. What if the fatherland's vaunted shield splinters under such brazen, insolent craft? That craft's true edge waited in the proving grounds, where flames would temper the bazooka from faltering spark to unyielding lance. Headlights carve jagged paths through the Nevada twilight, Late summer 1943. Dust devils pirouetting across the corrugated test range like restless spirits, whipping grit into eyes and throats as Major Hap Halliburton hunkers behind a barricade of sandbags, his palms slick against the bazooka's trigger guard, sweat beading under the relentless buzz of floodlights that swarm like enraged hornets. Crates of RP-3 rockets loom nearby, stacked in haphazard cordwood towers, their black powder fuses emitting faint serpentine hisses that promise chaos, while Uhl's engineers, shadows in oil-stained coveralls, fiddle with the piezoelectric igniter, coaxing a spark from mere friction to summon the inferno. The tube's bakelite grip warms in Hap's grasp like a clandestine touch, its phenolic liner rough as sun-ripened citrus peel, coiled to unleash a punch through 5 inches of steel at 300 feet per second. A velocity born of desperation, whispering the question, can this humble lance truly lance the tiger's hide? That unyielding shield of the Reich, the castle-forged myth that von Luck toasted with ersatz brew, loomed as the anvil against which Uhl's creation must hammer itself whole, the stakes etched in every failed dispatch from Sicily's scorched vineyards, where early bazookas glanced off Italian crust like errant stones, leaving panzer crews unscathed and GIs cursing the stovepipe as a brass-plated farce. The context coils tight. Overlord's shadow lengthens across the Atlantic, 10 divisions clamoring for an equalizer, a democratic sling against the Panzer's aristocratic thunder, lest Normandy become another Dieppe, a slaughter of waves breaking on iron cliffs. Ingenuity surges now, a rising tide of wrench turns and blueprint revisions. Post-Sicily's sting spurs the M9 metamorphosis, optical sights refined to razor clarity, a standoff probe appended like a surgeon's scalpel to trigger detonation at the perfect kiss, transforming abstract theory, the Monroe Effect's elegant alchemy, into gospel for the foxhole faithful. Admiration swells for the forge masters, their long vigils unraveling physics verse. How a conical liner of copper folds inward on strike, accelerating to max speeds in a fist of molten fury that bores deeper than any rifled slug, equalizing the scales where Sherman's faltered. Yet anticipation sharpens with human edges. Hap, his boot soles forever scarred from that desert backdraft, forges bonds in the range's haze with trainees like Private Rosa Rosie Delgado, the welder-turned warrior from Detroit's lines, her steady aim belying the folded letters from a brother vanished in Anzio's meat grinder, each shot a silent vow amid the jeers that once echoed in mess tents. Stovepipe? More like a goddamn umbrella. The test crest builds to eruption. Shoulder the load. Sight the silhouette. A plywood phantom draped in scrap plate, mocking a tiger's prow. Hap squeezes. 3 seconds to launch. Whoosh! Rocket erupts, tail plume scorching sand to glass, the tube bucking like a spooked Mustang in his grip. It streaks true. Slams. Detonation blooms, an orange plasma lance spewing forth like blood from a volcano's vein. The mock hull crumpling inward, steel weeping rivulets of slag as flames claw skyward, shattering the target's frame in a thunderclap that rattles teeth and scatters tools. Rosie flinches, then grins fierce through powder-stung cheeks, exhilaration crashing over mockery's ruins. The air electric with revelation. It pierces. Blisters rise on a tech's arm from errant heat, a 50% dud plague lingering like a curse. But the arc bends. Human cost tallied in singed flesh and haunted glances, balanced against the macro pivot. 5,000 M9s now arm the airborne legions, convoys snaking toward England under wolf-pack-veiled seas, each tube a talisman slinging fire from the shoulder of the ordinary man. Suspense thickens as crates vanish into Atlantic holds, dodging U-boat periscopes that slice the swells like predatory fins. Rosie hefts her first live round on English soil, the warhead's chill weight a dual-edged oath, promise of dawn, curse of the shadows it casts. Berlin's intercepts crackle with disdain. American Wunderwaffe, laughable trinkets. Yet as D-Day's 0 hour fractures the night, paratroopers plummet into Normandy's moor, bazookas strapped like defiant crucifixes, engines of waiting tigers idling in the gloom like doomsday pendulums. Triumph glimmers on the horizon, but the iron hearts beat steady. Would this tempered edge cleave the beast at last, or splinter against hide forged for eternity? Eternity shattered at 0200 hours on June 6th, when Silk met storm over Sainte-Mère-Église, and Kane's drop plunged the gamble into the dragon's throat. Silence erupts into pandemonium at 0200 hours, June 6, 1944, silk canopies unfurling like pallid spectres over Sainte-Mère-Église. The wind lashing harnesses with icy talons as the 82nd Airborne hurtles into Normandy's ink-drenched void. The Seine's fetid, muddy exhalation surging up to swallow them whole. Sergeant Elias Kane's C-47 shudders like a beast in labour, the red jump light throbbing like an open vein in the cabin's crimson gloom, before the jumpmaster's bellow unleashes the green flare. Plunge. Bazookas thump against ribs like leaden millstones. 15 pounds of forged defiance anchoring each man to the abyss. Stars wheeling in mocking arcs overhead, while distant flak tracers embroider the firmament with searing threads. The initial bootfall into flooded pastures sending shockwaves, through calf-deep brine-laced, with the iridescent scum of spilled avgas, that tempered edge from Nevada's sands. The M9's plasma lance now slung as talisman, plummets with them into the dragon's gullet. The gamble's throat constricting around Overlord's fragile pulse. Causeways must hold, or the beaches choke on their own tide of steel and flesh. 5 armoured divisions clawing for purchase, while von Luck's tigers lurk in camouflaged lairs, ready to snap the invasion's spine. The stakes carved deep, a suicide ledger etched in the scatter. 13,000 paratroopers seeded across the Cotentin like chaff in a gale, pitted against 50 iron behemoths in the sector alone, odds stacked like cordite crates, demanding not just survival but the audacity to turn scatter into strike. Cohesion forges in the chaos, a rising scramble through thorn-lashed hedgerows where Kane, boots sucking in the mire, links arms with a ragged knot of screaming eagles, farm boys from Ohio and sharpshooters from the Bronx, their silhouettes jagged against the crackle of burning gliders that blaze like forsaken pyres, fuselages splintering in pops of orange and shadow, spilling crates of bazookas into the slurry like offerings to some vengeful earth god. Flash to the German side. Fallschirmjäger rouse in concrete bunkers, rubbing sleep from eyes as Tiger Ausfahrten stir beneath netting laced with bocage barbs, engines coughing to life in the pre-dawn hush, their commanders peering through slits at the phantom rustles beyond. Intensity coils from disorientation's whirl, breaths heaving in ragged gusts through the downpour that sheets the fields like a shroud. To a grim, hardening resolve as Kane's squad scavenges rounds from the wreckage, olive-drab tubes caked in war paint of mud and dew, fingers fumbling fuses slick with rain. 3 minutes to reload, a lifetime to aim. Dawn's pallor greys the orchards, and the roar splits the mist. A Maybach bellow that rattles ribs. The Tiger's 88mm belching shells that uproot apple trees in colossal geysers of loam and splintered wood. Dive crawls flatten, hearts hammer like loose rivets. The beast prowls forward, its silhouette eclipsing the frail light. Glacis plate shrugging off carbine snaps like summer gnats. Treads pulverizing a glider's wing into confetti. Kane rises in the furrow. Loads, aims, fires. Smoke trails the rocket like a comet's vengeful wake, streaking low over the thorns. Impact. The warhead kisses flank steel. Detonation blooms in a muffled thunder. Orange licks scarring paint and buckling a bogey wheel. Flames licking hatches like probing tongues. The Tiger halts. Crew bails, scrambling into the haze, but the turret slews wild. Machine guns chattering death that rakes the ditch in furious stitches. Scarred, snarling. No kill. Yet the myth frays at the edges. A first graze in the arithmetic of attrition, where one dude fumble could doom the beachhead to crimson surf. The invasion's arteries severed before the sun crests. Fury simmers unanswered, the Colossus wheeling for reprisal as Kane's squad melts into the green maze, breaths sinking to the pulse of what comes next. Sunrise over Utah Beach would fan those embers into whispers of fire, where hedgerows concealed not just hunters, but the first true taste of reckoning. Sunrise hemorrhages crimson across Utah Beach's slaughter. June 7th, 1944. Waves clawing at steel hedgehogs with the frenzy of famished wolves, splintering timber and wire in salty froth that reeks of brine and cordite. While inland, the bocage rears its earthen ramparts like primordial sentinels, thorns hooking into fatigues with spiteful barbs that draw beads of blood. Private Rosa Delgado hunkers in a shell crater's lip, her bazooka propped on a fractured fence post like an improvised altar, scope lens clouded by Normandy's unyielding mizzle that transmutes the soil to viscous snare, trapping boots and hope alike. The ether vibrates with the invasion's grim chorus. guttural moans from the wounded weaving through the surf's ceaseless thunder, punctuated by a tiger's distant engine snarl threading the haze like a funeral toll, its vibration humming through the ground to set teeth, chattering, those embers fanned from the drop's scarred survivor. The tiger's flank blackened but fury, unquenched, now smoulder into tentative flames along the causeways, where the reckoning's first bitter savour lingers in the air, stakes knotted tighter than barbed wire. La Fiere's span must bridge the flooded marshes, funneling reinforcements shoreward, or the beachhead withers on the vine. 5 divisions worth of steel and sinew sacrificed to the tide's indifferent maw. Von Luck's panzers poised to pinch the artery shut. The thread pulls taut from Sainte-Mère-Églyse's scatter. Kane's squad coalescing with stragglers from the 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment, a patchwork of mud-smeared phantoms scavenging the debris for cohesion, their breaths sinking in the drizzle's chill to a rhythm of shared defiance. The stalk builds in shadowed increments, a rising creep through the labyrinth's veins. Kane leads the file along dew-slick furrows, boots squelching in the gluey earth, as intel from a captured Feldwebel pinpoints the probe. A lone Tiger Ausfahrten inching toward the causeway, its sloped glacis a sheer cliff that spits 30 caliber spite like mist on forge-hot anvil. Radio chatter crackling with crew's derisive glee at rat hunting in the thorns. Anticipation coils, electric and raw. Delgado's fingers tracing the tube's contours for reassurance, her mind flashing to Ancio's ghosts, while Kane murmurs tactics in hushed cadences, positioning flanks in the wall's blind folds, the M9's probe glinting like a stiletto's tip. Resolve hardens amid the wet slap of leaves, heart steadying to the weapon's promise. A flicker of mastery emerging from the drop's disarray. Contact ignites. Stalk ends rocket loads Delgado sights. 3 minutes to reload. Whoosh. Propellant blooms. Backblast searing daisies to brittle husks in a gust of scorched petals. The warhead hurtles. A venomous dart. Glances. Sparks fountain off the tracks in pyrotechnic rage. Steel shrieking as bogies buckle. Paint blistering black under the plasma's kiss. Exhilaration surges, Delgado's whoop raw and triumphant, a yelp swallowed by the roar as the beast slews. Turret questing like a blinded cyclops. Counterfire erupts, MG-42 rips the air, buzzsaw frenzy shredding bocage to verdant confetti that rains in stinging veils. Bullets chew earth. Kane lunges, shielding the medic with his frame. Shrapnel grazes his cheek, a hot traitor's peck drawing crimson rivulets. The tiger pivots, lunges. Treads pulverize a jeep into flattened ruin, chassis grinding bone and petrol to paste in a symphony of snaps and gurgles. Dread crashes in, icing the vein, as Von Luck, perched in a distant cupola, binoculars trembling, catches the tube's muzzle flash, irony coiling in his throat like bile. Children with fireworks, he mutters into the static, ore curdling to unease, guns blazing, but the dragon breathes back. From the frenzy fades a ledger of lean truths. The hit cripples mobility, forcing withdrawal, yet claims no kill. 30% duds in the muck's embrace. 12 bazooka bearers felled for one track's hobble. A toll narrated in compassionate measure, each name a heartbeat silenced amid the strategic stutter. Where infantry's bite begins to gnaw the panzer's heel. Night drapes the fields in velvet hush. The tiger limping into the gloom. First blood drawn, but the wound superficial. Whispers rippling through foxholes, like contraband hope. It wounds, at least. Delgado thumbs a fresh round under star-pricked sky. Digits quivering with the echo of that whoop-turned wail, as more engines muster in the dark, a steel swell gathering force. Scattered sparks tease Inferno's edge, but the pride of panzers swells undimmed. Could these hedgerow flickers coalesce into blaze enough to devour the iron horde? By July's swelter, those flickers would roar into Caen's crucible, where the tiger's throne faced its most savage trial. Midday haze quivers like a fevered veil over Caen's shattered heart. July 10th, 1944. Once a medieval jewel of vaulted stone and whispering cloisters. Now a snarl of eviscerated facades, where grotesque gargoyles glower from spires pocked by shell. Craters, their stone eyes blind to the Orne River slithering red through the debris, dyed in diesel slicks and the fresh varnish of blood. A tiger Awasef thunders through the choked avenues, commanded by SS Obersturmführer Kurt Knispel, its 88mm cannon barking cataclysm at prowling Shermans that ignite like phosphorus flares, hulls blooming into infernos that belch acrid, pyres, veiling the sun in morning cowls of soot and sorrow. The air thickens with the bite of scorched rubber and spent brass, a pall that clings to tongues and throats as Knispel's beast prowls the kill zone, its interleaved tracks pulverizing cobblestones to dust. Invincible, insatiable, a rolling requiem that begs the question, how many flames must lick before the iron god yields? Those hedgerow flickers, nursed from Lafayette's glancing wounds into a tentative blaze, now roar unchecked into Goodwood's anvil, Montgomery's thunderbolt, of 1,500 Allied tanks slamming against 200 panzers in a bid to crack the Norman line, yet the bocage's spectral fingers still clutch the flanks, herding the clash into urban charnel, where streets become funnels of fate, every alley a gauntlet, every ruin a roost for ambush. The stakes forge molten. Caen must shatter, or the breakout stalls in stalemate, Falais's pocket forever sealed, the invasion's momentum bleeding out in street-by-street attrition, where von Luck's columns, bolstered by SS steel, aim to grind the British hammer to a stump. From the whispers of first blood, Kane's ragged platoon swells to 20 souls. Veterans of the drop's disarray now schooled in the tube's temper, linking with engineers who rig the Abbey's cloisters as hornet nests, shadows pooling in incense haunted, vaults where the air hangs leaden with phantom chants, and the raw tang of cordite ghosts. The ambush simmers in deliberate layers, a rising orchestration of grit and guile. Kane positions flanks along the nave's fractured arches, M9s cradled like relics in the gloom, while Delgado calibrates her sight through a lancet window's jagged frame, the standoff probe glinting like a heretic's dagger amid the dust motes dancing in slanted light. Ingenuity sharpens the edge. Scavenged Piat rounds, jury-rigged for tandem fire, the shaped charge's poetry recited in hushed breaths. 7 inches of penetration, a molten finger to probe the beast's vitals. Emotional currents surge, defiance, cresting from the hedgerow's chill dread to a fevered anticipation. Kane's voice steadying a loader's tremor with tales of Nevada's triumphs, hearts pounding in unison to the distant rumble, mastery dawning in the shared grip of the tube's warmed steel. Knispel's Tiger, notched with 195 kills from the steppes to Sicily, lumbers into view, its ace commander peering through fogged slits, hubris a warm cloak against the haze. Collision detonates. Ambush springs. Sights lock. 3 minutes to reload. Dual triggers squeeze. Whoosh! First rocket leaps, a serpent of smoke uncoiling from the cloister's throat. Dud. Sparks wild, veering into rubble that erupts in futile geysers of stone and dust. Second launches. Crack. Streaks true. Boom. Warhead. Burrows flank deep. 7 inches of fury, igniting ammo racks in a cataclysmic belch. Orange apocalypse venting through hatches like hell's own exhalation. Crew silhouettes writhing in the flash before secondary blasts shred the turret from its ring. Steel peeling like scorched parchment in a maelstrom of shrapnel that rains in lethal confetti. Screams fracture the roar, silenced by the inferno's gulp. Delgado fires again, her shot lancing low to cripple tracks in a fountain of severed bogies and hydraulic shriek. Frenzy peaks, exhilaration a wild torrent as the Abbey quakes. Von Lux, distant columns stuttering at the plume's accusatory finger, his binoculars dropping from numb grasp. Shrapnel kisses Kane's brow, a hot graze amid the hail. He crumples over his loader's form, charred and still, triumph curdling to a gut-wrenching sob that racks his frame, awe inverting hubris in the acrid reek. Knispel, the war's shadowed, virtuoso, perishes in his throne, flames claiming the ace in ironic symmetry. The ledger unfurls in tempered verdict. 88 tigers felled in Caen's grinder, 300 bazooka tallies etched across the campaign, figures stark as bayonets, yet warmed by the human pulse. Delgado's letter home, scrawled in a foxhole's flicker. We made the giants bleed, Hermano, but oh, the rivers it carves. Historians' gaze sweeps broad, marking the pivot where infantry's lance tips the scales. GI's terror braided with terror's end. The panzer tide ebbing in hollow echoes as the abbey smoulders. Victory's bellow ringing vacant over the pyre. Berlin howls reprisal. Panthers uncoiling from the east in vengeful phalanx. One breach spawning deluge. The Reich's armoured reverie fracturing but unbowed. How many more dragons must topple before the iron phantasmagoria crumbles to rust? By August's iron grip, that crumbling would trap the horde in Falais's vice, where scorched earth would tally the bazooka's true harvest. Twilight unfurls like a sanguine pall across the Falaise pocket. August 17th, 1944. Fields gouged into lunar hollows where tiger carcasses smoulder in sullen heaps, their interleaved wheels splayed outward like the mangled limbs of felled arachnids. Bocage thorns snatching at dog tags that dangle from twisted gun barrels. Glinting dully in the dying light, Sergeant Elias Kane trudges the cordon line, boots sinking into the churned slurry flanked by idling Shermans and the predatory whine of typhoon wings slicing low overhead. The atmosphere a viscous broth of charred rubber, and the cloying, gangrenous bloom of decay. Vultures tracing lazy spirals above the 10,000 German fallen who litter the trap, their forms blurring into the earth that sealed Normandy's fate. The wind carries faint, acrid whispers from the wrecks, metal ticking as it cools, a requiem for the iron dream now reduced to slag and shadow, prompting the ache. In this vice of scorched earth, what harvest had the humble tube truly reaped? That savage trial in Caen's cloisters, the Ace's pyre and the ebbing tide, had cracked the dam, funneling the panzer horde into Falaise's lethal embrace, where Canadian hammers and Polish pincers closed the jaws on 50,000 souls, stakes forged in the breakout's fever. Seal the pocket, or watch the Wehrmacht slither east to regroup, prolonging the bleed across France's breast, the invasion's fragile artery forever vulnerable to counterstroke. The thread from the Abbey's hollow roar weaves here. Kane's platoon, scarred but unbowed, patrolling the perimeter with tubes slung low, their fire now a proven scythe in the reaper's hand. Ingenuity's arc bending from hedgerow grazes to systematic harvest, where M9 crews, versed in flank ambushes and tandem volleys, turn bocage blind spots into execution grounds. Reflection gathers in the gloaming's hush, a somber procession through the toll. Schaeff dispatches tally over 500 tank kills from D-Day's dawn to this cauldron's close, the bazooka's lance dismantling the tiger's spectral aura. One crew near St. Lo claiming 3 in a single sun-scorched afternoon. Warheads delving deep to liquefy Maybach hearts into molten ruin, engines exhaling their last in gouts of sapphire flame. Respect tempers the air, heavy as the Iron Cross cane slips into his pocket from a commander's ashen grasp. Its weight a leaden emblem of regret, while von Luck, captured and swathed in bandages, his uniform rent like his certainties, stares at a gutted tiger's husk, irony carving furrows in his brow. "Your pipe," he murmurs to his guards, voice a rasp of shattered brass. It ended our symphony in discord. Emotional currents ebb from exhilaration's crash to this quiet reverence, the human ledger unspooling, 2,000 Allied dead to the tube's own backdraft and reprisal, ghosts of loaders and spotters haunting the survivors' eyes, machine spectres lingering in the nightmares of those who felled them. A skirmish's echo surfaces, brief and brutal, to punctuate the pall. Spot the straggler. Load swift. Kane sights from a crater's rim. 3 seconds, and empires crack. Rocket flies, burrows, slag sprays. The last tiger slews, hatches flinging shadows before the bloom consumes it whole. No cheers. Just silence, broken by a medic's sigh. The frenzy yields to analysis's steady breath. 50% of tigers downed by infantry's anti-tank bite. Not the heavens' thunder. A pivot where the shoulder-fired heresy rewrites the calculus. Chaff maps blooming red with breaches. The Reich's mythos fracturing like frost on glass. Hitler purging commanders in Berchtesgaden's fury. Model's steel gaze turning east in vain grasp at cohesion. Numbers numb the tongue, yet pulse with lives. Each killer heartbeat stilled. A family's vigil unmet. The portable's triumph a mirror to devastation's face. As the pocket cinches final, shockwaves ripple toward the Rhine's chill banks. Heresy vindicated in the victor's weary stance. Kane fingering the cross under starless vault. its edges biting palm like unspoken penance. Victory's umbra stretches long, Ardennes' frosts gathering on the wind, tigers mustering anew in snow-veiled lairs. Would the bazooka's ember kindle the last assault, or flicker out in winter's merciless grasp? Winter's bite would test that ember in Hurtgen's frozen glooms, where December snows cloaked a final stand for the iron relics. Snow lashes the Hurtgen forest's gaunt pines like vengeful spectres. December 15th, 1944. Branches clawing the air with skeletal insistence, mud congealing into bootlaces like frozen manacles as a Tiger AUSF. B, the hulking Königstiger, prowls the Siegfried Line's frozen ramparts, its Porsche turret slewing ponderously through knee-deep drifts, the 88mm muzzle sheathed in rime that glitters like false diamonds under the pallid sun. Sergeant Elias Kane's veterans, battle-worn shades of the 4th Infantry, slip through the firs like wraiths, bazookas upgraded with M6A3 rounds slung low, their warheads primed to rend 200mm of steel at kissing range, breaths clouding in spectral plumes that mingle with the beast's exhaust belch. A diesel dirge underscoring the crunch of treads, pulverizing ice. A toll that tolls the question, in this glacial purgatory, would the ember endure to pierce the final veil? That merciless winter's grasp, stretching shadows from Falaise's pyres, now clamps the Ardennes in Hitler's desperate vice, the bulge counter-offensive's gamble. 100 panzer divisions surging from the mist to split the Allied seam, stakes hewn from desperation's grain. Hold Bastogne's crossroads, or watch the Rhine's bridges burn in retreat's fire. The portable Lance's legacy tested in Sub-Zero Forge where Frost claims fingers before lead. Kane's platoon, threadbare from the pocket's toll, reinforced by engineers who bolt M6A3 boosters for standoff fury, turning the tube from bocage whisper to winter's howl. The pursuit builds in hushed increments, a rising vigil through the woodland's white labyrinth. Kane's ghosts fan out along ridgelines, supercharged loads cradled against chests that heave in the -20 bite. Ingenuity's quiet evolution. Warhead liners thickened for cryogenic bite, sights etched against the glare. Stoking anticipation from despair's numb gnaw, toes blackening in sodden wool to a steely resolve forged in shared scar tissue. Delgado's gloved hand steadying a private's shiver with murmurs of Khan's ghosts made real. Triumph simmers low, mastery etched in frost-rimed beards, as intel pins the Königsteiger's flank, its wider tracks devouring snow but betraying the turn with a groan of stressed torsion. Ambush uncoils. Ghosts close, sight the prow. 3 seconds. Delgado loads. Fires. Rocket hurtles. Plume slicing the flurry like a comet's lash. Flank kiss. Eruption, fuel tanks rupture in a geyser of frozen naphtha. Flames clawing skyward through the drift in sapphire defiance. The behemoth slewing wild before hatches vomit shadows into the white. Secondary blasts crumpling the turret like foil in thunderous snaps. It lists, burns, falls silent. The frenzy dissolves into hush, breath's vapor the only stir, as Bastogne's siege fractures, and Remagen's span beckons. Bazookas claiming over 100 heavies in the counterstroke's churn, from foxhole volleys that brew up Königsteigers, to bridgehead breaches where tubes tip the scales. Emotional tides turn from hell's despair, limbs aching with phantom thaw to quiet triumph's glow. Costs carved in purple hearts and gangrenous stubs, narrator's voice rolling with tempered grace. Machines broke men, but men broke machines. A ledger of 2,000 more lives bartered for the Rhine's echo. As the river ices over, endgame's chill settles. Berlin's bunkers reverberating with defeat's hollow footfalls. Kane sighting the last prowler through veils of sleet, finger unyielding on the guard. Fire kindles one ultimate bloom, and the dragon yields to stillness, its roar quenched in the drifts. Yet in victory's suspended breath, amid the pine's mournful sway, what enduring wounds does this portable apocalypse etch upon the victor's souls? Those wounds would find their measure in May's grey dawn, where the Rhine's quarries cradled the pipe dream's wake and the true ledger closed. VE Day breaks in sombre slate over the Elbe's sullen flow. May 8th, 1945. Berlin's fractured spires raking the overcast like the talons of some defeated leviathan. While miles westward in a Rhine quarry's shadowed scar, GIs stack discarded bazooka tubes in leaning cairns like toppled dominoes, their warheads dulled to inert relics amid the scatter of dented ration tins. and pin-ups faded to ghosts, creased smiles mocking the silence. Sergeant Elias Kane, gaunt and threaded with premature grey, kneels by a derelict tiger's turret. His fingers, calloused maps of hedgerow and hollow, tracing the ragged melt scar from his final shot, the metal still exhaling a faint, acrid tang of quenched fury, as if the iron beast exhales its last defiance into the quarry's chill draught, stirring the query. In this hush of cessation, what indelible furrows does the victor's blade carve upon its wielder? Those enduring wounds from Hurtgen's icy hush, the souls etched by Apocalypse's portable hand, find their quiet accounting here, in the war's receding tide, where the stakes dissolve from survival's razor to legacy's lingering weight. Normandy's charnel claimed 400,000 lives in its 80 days of churn, a calculus of mud and myth, where the bazooka's spark tipped 20% of anti-tank kills. Audits from Schaff's ink-stained clerks hailing 7,000 tubes produced as the everyman's equalizer, yet shadowed by the flaws that haunted every launch. Backblast veiling eyes in momentary night, dud rates plaguing the desperate with false dawns, each misfire a heartbeat's betrayal in the foxhole's grip. The arc circles complete, from ditch dwellers quaking in bocage rain to dragon slayers who bent the Reich's spine, the hidden journey of Kane's platoon a microcosm of transformation. Fear's initial vice yielding to defiance's forge, mastery claimed in plasma's bloom, now legacy's burden shouldered in the quarry's dust. Resolution unfolds in undulating waves, a reflective procession through the survivors' sundered paths. Dr Edward Uhl slips back to Pennsylvania's Quaker folds, his drafting table gathering dust in a clapboard home where silence reigns, patents once sketched in fevered hope now pyres in memory's hearth, his evenings spent in lamplit vigils over letters unmailed, the ethical thorns blooming anew in peacetime soil. Private Rosa Delgado crosses the Atlantic's grey expanse, Rosie the riveter no more, her welder's torch bent to civilian bridges and hulls in Detroit's humming yards, steady hands masking the tremor of Anzio's echoes and Khan's whoops turned wails, her letters home now tales of hearth and kin, the tube's weight traded for a child's grasp. Across the divide, Oberst Hans von Luck stands in a Nuremberg cell, bandaged frame unbowed before the tribunal's glare, his testimony a measured dirge. Your little rocket humbled gods, turning our thunder to ash, may it rust in peace. Bittersweet gravity crests, triumph's laurel woven with thorns of the fallen, the moral heft pressing like sodden wool upon the chest, each statistic a pulse. The bazooka's ledger of 500 heavies felled, balanced against the 2,000 GIs scorched or silenced by its own recoil, machine's ghosts whispering through the victor's dreams. A reversal from arrogance's blaze to sorrow's sober gaze. No final clash erupts here, only the slow unravelling of echoes. Newsreels flicker in allied camps, tubes created for Pacific handover or Korean reprise, the cycle's inexorable turn, while Kane discards his last round into the Elbe's current, the splash a solitary punctuation swallowed by the flow. 3 seconds to rewrite history. The hidden arc resolves in quiet undulations, from Kane's numb fingers in the Normandy ditch, clutching pipe dream salvation, to this quarry vigil where mastery yields to mourning, the dragon slayer's gaze hollowed by the pyres he kindled. Defiance's fire banked to embers that warm no more. Dual lenses converge. The historian's broad sweep charting the pivot where shoulder-fired heresy shattered panzer pride, tipping fronts from bocage to bulge. The intimate close on souls like Delgado's, welding scars into strength. Von Luck's irony a bridge across the chasm. In the Rhine's murmur, reflection lingers long. The portable Armageddon's wake a tapestry of awe shadowed by ache. Innovation's spark that freed continents, yet chained minds to the chain of what was wrought. In the end, the bazooka's legacy endures not in rusting tubes or audited tallies, but in the unyielding truth that ingenuity, born of desperation's forge, wields a double-edged flame. It topples tyrants and tempers the human spirit, reminding us that the tools we craft to end one night often dawn another, their fire a beacon shadowed eternally by the cost of the light they cast. What worlds might we build, then, if victory's hush bids us listen first to the scars it leaves?